I had a pretty interesting observation today, or it was a thought, that most people don't really have a desire anymore to be in church leadership. I remember there's a time years ago that if the call was, presented before a congregation on who wants to be in church leadership, who has aspirations and desires and maybe a burn in their heart to be part of church leadership. When I say church leadership, I mean from deacons and ushers and elders and school teachers, Sunday school teachers and youth leaders and, outreach ministers and, all the different, aspects of ministry that would fall within a particular church. And you basically, the entire church would empty out, coming to the front or raising their hand, desiring to be part of some of those groups, whether it's actually the leader of a group or part of the individuals that are actually helping someone. I remember years ago, for many years, I had an outreach ministry into the neighborhoods. And so I was the actual leader of that outreach team, but there were at any given time, maybe between 3, 7, 8, 12 people as part of that team. So considering themselves church leadership or being part of the ministry. But today, there really isn't that desire. And I think it's something that really needs to be considered because we want to make sure that our church is healthy. We want to make sure that, just like we look at our bodies, just because we wake up every day, it doesn't mean that we're healthy. Just because we get up and shower and go to work and do the things that we're supposed to do, it doesn't mean that we're healthy at all. And many of us, unfortunately, find that out, later in life. And unfortunately, at younger and younger ages. Because we weren't checking, we weren't making sure that we were okay. We weren't eating the right kind of foods. We weren't getting the right kind of exercises. We just weren't considering, the state of our body. We just assumed, sort of like young people, that, we're okay. But it's very important. And so I was thinking about that aspect of our church today, and maybe social media, cable, television, all that stuff that's sort of ushered this new way of thinking into the body of believers, that we're no longer looking to be part of the ministry, we're just looking to be entertained by the ministry. And a case in point are these large mega churches, maybe out on the West Coast or somewhere else, where you see they're sending mailers even all the way to the East Coast, people to donate to their ministry and watch us on TV because that is the power of cable, and that is the power of the worldwide web of live streaming a particular service from a state that you may not be living in. And that's all well and good for the ministry, but how for the ministry itself, if the ministry itself is simply the individual star, okay? I guess that's what I'm pointing. I'm believing that what we see, even when you it's obvious when you look at a church that has maybe thousands and thousands of members, and we see those churches, on Sunday morning on TV, and we recognize that why would a church be attracting thousands and thousands of members like that? Oh, because of the power of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Not necessarily. Because if you look at those folks, they're really sold in on their particular pastor, that particular star. That's the person that they're coming to see. I mean, it's a known fact that in most of these major cities, when these large preachers came on the scene, and their churches almost overnight built into thousands and thousands of members, it wasn't because the power of God was sweeping across the city and people who were in the world were being drawn to the church. But what you find is you do research that all these little churches were shutting down, and the parishioners from the little churches were going to this celebrity pastor to be part of that congregation. And so then what you're finding is these people are not coming as they are being drawn, by the Spirit of God. They're coming to be part of an organization with a particular celebrity pastor that they want to attach themselves to. And so what I'm suggesting is that the church then over the years has transitioned from being a church full of different varying ministries that are all functioning for particular needs in a particular community, are now simply coming on Sunday morning to be entertained by the show. So they have I don't know if back in the day in the 70s, I used to go to the concerts like Rick James and Michael Jackson, Billy Preston, Tavares, all these. Yeah, I remember Al Jarreau and some of the concerts I used to go to years ago. Where you go to the concert, and before that star would come out, like George Benson, Randy Crawford, I remember seeing him in Cincinnati years and years ago. Before the star came out, they'd have these little groups, that you didn't know much of, or that they were pretty good, but they weren't the star, you were waiting for. And that was okay. And so what you find is then on Sunday morning, that's what you have. You have the entertainment. You have that little floor show. You have those little, prepping ministries or songs or whatever to get the church into the right mood so they're ready to receive the star. But that's what we're coming for, is entertainment, and there's something lacking there. The lack is a lack of a desire for the parishioners to be participants in the show. They just want to watch the show. And so it's no different than when we're watching the Real Housewives of this, or the TI that, or all these, reality shows we have on TV. You don't want to be, in the mix. You don't want to be on that set. You don't want to be there interacting with them. You just want to sit there and watch and be entertained by them. And what I'm suggesting then is that our churches have become more of like that reality program that we're sitting back watching and enjoying, and not really desiring to be a part of. And see, that's a failure. That's a real failure. Look at it again as we're correlating it to the body, as if you just had a piece of your body that just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. There are other functioning parts that need to be growing as well. And so the church that is out of balance, it's not healthy, it's not well. And out of that, just like any kind of sickness with the body, other manifestations of disease begin to come forth from this one piece of unhealthy lifestyle or unhealthy manifestation. And we've seen it, over the past quite a few years here in this nation. A lot of negativity, a lot of harshness, a lot of hate, a lot of meanness. That's sort of been brought out by the political environment, but still there, festering and simmering even within the heart of its churches today. And what I'm suggesting is that we're just not well. And see, when you have a functioning body of believers with varying ministries, and all the ministries, there are ministry leaders, and then the rest of the parishioners are actually part of those ministries, working and functioning for particular needs, like the poor folks in the community, or the incarcerated in the community, or those that are in the hospital, or the orphans, or the widows, or whatever the ministries, or the old folks' home, or whatever the ministries, people are, what's happening is the heart is being affected. See, you can't hardly minister without being changed yourself. That's how we grow. That's how we grow and grow to be more like Christ. We're supposed to be adjusting and transitioning and becoming more and more like Christ, right? But it doesn't seem to be going that way because we're not putting anything into it. What I'm suggesting is there's this concept of sowing and reaping that unfortunately has been equated simply to money. Often, when we're raising offerings or raising, tithes and offerings and donations to the church, if you sow, you'll reap what you sow. And you get it back, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give in your bosom. And we get all these motivations to give money to the church. And they're true. I believe that they are true. And I've noticed it and received it and experienced that myself. You do reap what you sow, whatever you sow. But what I want to suggest today is that's just one small aspect of the sowing and reaping. And when you find the needs of the community, the needs of the church, the needs of so many folks that are suffering, as you begin to sow into their needs, you begin reaping back as well. And I found that out when I was ministering for those 17 years at juvenile detention. I would speak to the youth in the mornings. I would show up there maybe 9 or so in the morning and be there till about 10:30, 11. Then I'd show up at church. Church was already running and people would know I was coming from juvenile. And they would think, oh, that's wonderful. There's Brother Martin coming in for speaking to those kids. That's just so wonderful. What a great thing he's doing. But what those folks didn't realize was the concept of sowing and reaping. It's that I would show up there every week. I missed 4 weeks in 17 years. So every week for 17 years, I would show up and I would speak to between like 10 and 30 young people all at one time. So imagine that I'm sowing into all of their lives. There's just one of me. So I'm sowing into so many lives and reaping. What do you think I was reaping back? If the concept of sowing and reaping is true. So I'm speaking into their lives insight. I'm speaking to their lives understanding. I'm speaking to their lives compassion and care and understanding and love. I'm reaping back all those things. And that sustained me. There are many situations in life situations, some of them tumultuous, that I have lived through even in those 17 years. But I survived. I was well. I was unscathed. Why? Because I was sowing those positive attributes into the lives of so many, and I was reaping back just the same, even more than I was giving out. Imagine if I plant seeds. I plant tomatoes. I plant pepper seeds. I plant so many seeds. There's just one of me. But I plant so many seeds, and so there's just one of me, but the harvest that I reap from those planting of those seeds is far greater in number than I am as the one, okay? So that is the power in ministry. So we have that in our community churches, is when we have a healthy church that has many ministries that are sowing into the needs of the community, the needs of those that are disheartened, the needs of, I was in prison, and you visited me. I was sick and you tended to my needs. I was this and I was that. That is the reaping. The church will be reaping all those positive attributes from all those ministries that are sowing into so many needs in the community. But see, we don't have that now. Because we have celebrity preachers, we have entertainment. We're not coming to church to be used, to be used by God, for the heart of God to sow into the lives of those that God loves. We're simply coming to be entertained. And we have our Bibles, and we have our notebooks, and we have our pens, and we have our iPads, and we're getting all this information and taking all these notes. But what's it doing for us? Nothing, because we're not putting it into operation, because we're not part of the show. You have to be part of the show. And so when you have a church or 2 or 3 churches in the West Coast that have 50,000 people in there that are all simply focused on this one man or this one woman that's speaking and enjoying that, and that was church, came here, listened to the music, saw the little show, maybe saw a skit, maybe saw some praise dancers, listened to the preacher, gave my offering, went home, I've been to church. Where's the sowing in those 50,000 people? And if there's no sowing, imagine what it could be. Imagine if those 50,000 people were sowing into the lives of the community, were sowing into the lives of the disheartened, the unloved, the sick, the infirm, the incarcerated, the forlorn, the dejected, the widows, the orphans, all those folks out there. If the 50,000 people in this body of believers were actually as individuals sowing through different ministries into the lives of the people in the community that they're in the midst of, what kind of reaping do you think that church would manifest in that particular church? What I'm suggesting is that there is stuff to do. There is work to do. There is something to do to bring the seed. We study this scripture. We study this scripture. We know the words. We come to church. We listen to the preacher. We amen. We affirm. We clap. We enjoy the show. And we go home. And that's all well and good, especially if we give our tithes and offerings, because it keeps that particular entity functioning. But what is it? What is its purpose really? Oh, well, now all these people are going, oh, come on, I've been part of evangelism for so many years, for all those years in juvenile, even prior to that in the neighborhoods. And even now, still, in this particular unique way, I still am. But what I've seen is I've been part of the messages and preached the messages. Giving your heart to God and all this stuff. But there is a particular aspect of the reality of humanity that we're missing, and that is the wellness. There is one thing to be well with God, but the other thing is to be well in and of yourself, to be okay as we are trying to survive and live in this world, and we're not. And so it's not enough to be, the hell and brimstone message. How can I help you be well? And I think it was almost a blessing for me to be there all those years, even aside from the reaping, all the love and the goodness that I was ministering to the lives of so many. But as well for me to get an opportunity to see how that really doesn't help if there isn't tangible follow-up. And if these that I am ministering to are not becoming disciples, they'll not be in a position where they can reap what they are sowing into the lives of others. I tried my best often there, because I wouldn't see them, after they were released. But I would tell them, and I'm telling you today, the key to being well in this thing as a believer, to be healthy as a believer, is that concept of sowing and reaping. And And so I can make it easy, give you some homework right now. Whatever it is you feel like you're lacking in your life, whatever you feel that's getting you down, find somebody that has less to you and less than you and help them sow into their life. And that sowing and reaping will begin to rebound. The reaping will begin to rebound in your life. But we cannot simply be stagnant. We can't be not moving, and expect to be receiving. And that's all I'm sharing today. That is the issue that we have. We are stagnant because we are not being discipled. Being preached to is not being discipled. Having a Bible study is not being discipled. Being discipled is a personal interaction, showing this is what I do. The other day I was in a neighborhood, man, and I saw this mother cat. And you don't really see this very often, But I saw this mother cat. Now this is in the hood, kind of running across the street, and she's like moving along this little baby cat with her, Then the baby cat runs faster than the mother, and is jumping into the grass and all. That was very interesting. And then about 3 seconds later, I saw another cat, little baby cat, come running, chasing. And then another one came chasing too. That little mother cat was discipling these little baby cats. And it took that relationship. It took that walk. It took that do what I do and you'll see what I'm doing. And whatever that mother cat's doing, those little cats are going to be doing that same thing because they're in relationship and they're walking and running with and doing exactly what they see the mother doing. And see, this is what we were created to be. Even in our families, our children, they give you the insight into the plan of God as far as how we're to learn, how to respond. These little children are put into our lives, and they're just watching us. Speaking of a buddy of mine the other day, his little grandbaby now. I love little babies, And if any of you have ever had a little baby, you're holding a little baby, you're feeding that milk. When you're feeding them that bottle of milk, and they're just staring at you while they're drinking with those lovely eyes, just staring at you and staring at you. Well, think about that. What are they staring at? They're observing you. They're learning from you. They're beginning to understand from you, and they spend the rest of their lives as babies, and then as toddlers, and growing up through the process, just watching you and mimicking you and being what you are, both good and bad. But they have to come to points in their matriculation and their learning that they are doing what you are doing. That's how they survive. That's how they matriculate. That's how they grow. And so that's a perfect example that God has given us, even in our households, on the way it's supposed to be. They're not just supposed to just be watching us all of their lives and maybe taking notes and whatever. They're supposed to be demonstrating. They're supposed to do what we're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to do what we're doing. And years ago, I started the martial art when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And it was really cool. I don't know how it is today, but at least back then, what you'd have when you'd walk into a martial art club, you'd see folks that are white belts teaching folks things. And you're like, what's that? What's that white belt teaching somebody else what to do? But they'd be teaching them the most basic, how to hold your hand when you throw a punch, or how to stand, in a horse stance, or how to, all these little kind of things. So what they would do is, in every level of growth in a martial art club, you would be both a student and a teacher. And because somebody figured out that's how you get good in your teaching. Man, when you're sitting there trying to teach something, see, you might be sloppy at throwing a punch. You might be sloppy at whatever it is you're doing. But when you have the responsibility of teaching someone, you're going to make sure, because they're watching you, that you're going to make sure that you're doing things exactly to the best of your ability, like they're supposed to be. So each time you demonstrate, you're careful, you're getting better, and you're teaching this individual at the same time. So while this individual is learning from you, you are learning from the process. You're reaping what you're sowing. That's what the church has been missing. And we can't afford to miss it. And I don't know, who do you blame that on, It's sort of like when I'm in the neighborhoods and I see poor people. You say, the poor people, they shouldn't be on welfare, blah, 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 should be working. But then you realize that they were babies born in a household that had that particular lifestyle. And you want to blame that mother, but then you realize that mother was probably a baby born in that environment. And so then where do you go to blame? You don't know. Who knows? It doesn't matter. See, we come in this nation and even in the churches too long, we're sitting and trying to blame folks for the situation of their lives. Jesus didn't do that. Because if he did, we'd all be condemned and we'd all be lost. His word even to that woman caught in the very act of adultery, I don't condemn you. Jesus doesn't condemn us. But we certainly are condemning each other. My friends, what we're supposed to be doing is helping each other, not condemning each other. We're supposed to be sowing love into the lives of so many. We have so many folks right now that are rejecting church, rejecting God, rejecting Jesus. And what I want to suggest to you today, they're not rejecting God. They're rejecting the so-called representatives of God that have not presented God properly. And these folks are saying that God definitely doesn't exist because we have placed ourselves in that position as being the representation God on this earth. And so what I'm saying, I think Scripture tells us the Gentiles have blasphemed because of the actions of the believer, of the so-called believers. We need to remember what our role is and recognize the only real road to our own wellness is what we're sowing into the lives of those who are in need. Okay, that's what come on, man. That's what Scripture tells us so clearly. When the Lord said to the man that I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was sick and you didn't come see about me. I was in prison and you didn't visit me. Lord, when were you this? When were you that? In that you did it not to the least, you did it not to me. Depart from me. Church folks, we need to see that. We're so busy condemning folks. Condemning folks on welfare. Condemning, folks that are illegal immigrants. Condemning folks that have sexual gender orientations that we just can't identify with. We need to recognize that our job is not to condemn. And what I would suggest to you today, that if we would be spending more time showing love and empathy and care and concern to the lives of those folks in the world, many of those issues that many folks are clinging on to would be falling away. But what I'm suggesting, I'm suggesting a whole lot of stuff today. That we have fallen into the same vein even as the Pharisees of old. That where first of all we are simply being entertained. And the leadership love to be the entertainers, love to be recognized. Isn't that what Jesus was talking about? Love to be recognized. And so we're not really growing because that's the extent of our religious experience is the entertainment that we're receiving once or twice a week. And so we're not in a position to sow positiveness and wellness and love and empathy and care and concern and help into the lives of those who are out there. But what we do have is a quick criticism, a quick condemnation against those Muslims, against those atheists, against those folks and these folks over here. We have not realized it, but we have transformed ourselves right outside of that which we are supposed to be like Christ. Why? Because we're simply being entertained by the church leadership. And we're not exercising the ministry through our own lives. That's it. Man, I started this program, man, or when I started studying or thinking or contemplating, I was a little bit down because I'm thinking, God, this situation is hopeless. We just don't care, and we're harsh, and we're mean, and we're nasty, and we're just not nice, and so then what do you think we're reaping back? Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, that will he also reap. I'm just thinking, man, these mega churches, as wonderful as the messages might be coming out of them, where's the message of discipleship? Where is the message of actually forming ministry which ministers to the needs of those who are suffering? Because that's where our wellness lies. That's where the church, when Scripture talks about the world going to be getting darker, and that church is supposed to be a light in the midst of the darkness, well, how would you define that light? That is what the light is. It's not that, go to where the sound of the music is coming from and break into and come into that house and listen to the music and the preaching. It's the light in the darkness. So consider that. If an individual is in darkness, where is that light? The light is what they see, what they experience from that place. From that place where Jesus gave the instruction on being witnesses, on being that which reaches the world. That's the light in the darkness. We are not that. And that is where our wellness lies. And what I'm suggesting is it's not only that we're not in a place to reap positiveness because we're not sowing positive, we're in a place for real to receive negativity, because that, in fact, is what we've been sowing for so long. But it's not too late. And that's what I'm here for. To tell you that it's not too late. To tell you that we just need to realize that we have a role to play in this thing. And what's difficult is we cannot create a feeling of empathy within ourselves, okay? Very difficult. So what I would suggest is praying for empathy, praying for love, praying for concern, praying for a heart that Jesus has for the people. For God so loved the world. If God so loved the world, God, give me that love for that world. But that's challenging. Because what is contained in that world is every kind of individual you could think of. And those individuals whose lifestyles and attitudes and religious beliefs might offend. But that's the world that God loved. God sent Jesus to die for. So I'm just suggesting today, in a long about way of ranting and raving, that we, as believers, we need to get busy. This is not a reality program. This is not enough just to come to church to be entertained, because that's not going to help you. Sowing and reaping. And I want to close on, and this is kind of funny, I guess. Kind of pertains to it, and it's true. That coming up, my son, even when he was in high school, he was working. He was working at Max and Irma's, I believe, when he was a senior. And whenever I go to a restaurant, any restaurant, I always tip well. Sometimes, depending on, I tip more in the tip than the meal cost. I've done that many times. Because I recognize that this person working there is making way less money than me. In the situation that I'm in life, I'm certainly blessed. So I just feel I tip them really well. Sometimes my wife kind of gets in my case because she thinks I'm going overboard. And my daughter is like, she's becoming like me, because whenever I say, well, Daddy, give him some more. She's always trying to get me to tip more. Even when it's way more. The concept of how much that is, she's not quite grasping, I don't think. But what was very interesting is, while my son was working at Max and Irma's, he would come home. He would be amazed at how much he was making in tips. He couldn't believe how much the people were tipping him. And in my mind, my little secret was, I believed that as I was sowing into the lives of other people's sons and daughters in these restaurants, that I was sowing so much in tips into their lives that I was reaping in tips through the lives of my son. Okay? So the more I was tipping, the more he'd come back amazed at how much money he made in tips each night. And that's what I'm suggesting today, is when we're looking at our children and they're suffering through things and they're not quite where we need them to be, where we want them to be. Think about the concept of sowing and reaping. Maybe I'm not the one to reach my child. Maybe I'm not the one that can get through. But if I could reach somebody else's child, if I can get through to that child, sow into their lives, I might reap back in the life of my child. How's that? But anyway, just kick that around. Sowing and reaping. Get involved in ministry. Have a desire to do ministry. Recognize the heart of Jesus is all about love. Begin to function in that love. Sowing in that love. And you'll reap the same. In Jesus' name. How's that?